Derek Crochet, Yohan Moncada, Eloy Jimenez, and Michael Kopech. They're all gone. So who makes up the core of the White Sox? Let's discuss with my guest next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert at SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network, and also have covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. So Garrett Crochet's in Boston. Yohan Moncada's been bought out. Michael Kopech, Eloy Jimenez, they got traded at last season's deadline. There's not much left of the core for the team that won the 2021 AL Central Division title. So let's discuss with my guest, Beefloaf from the 108, who makes up now the core of this team as he's been keeping a running total on that. And then him and I will also discuss the Sox will win over 50 games this year and also why it's good for the Sox fans to still get together this offseason and maybe have some hope of better days or at least vent. And from big upsets to a game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And Beef. Can I call you Beef? Do I know you like that now? Do I know you
Beef, Loaf, Mr. Loaf, Mr. Delicious. Any of the above would work, Todd. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you. So I saw your tweet where you had the recent core. So it's basically been, two young pitchers and three asterisk situations, right?
Pretty much. I mean, and the way I do this, Todd, is I try to only take guys that have some major league experience, at least enough where you could feel like they might be entrenched into a role. And so with some of the roster churn that's happened lately, and you mentioned Yohan Moncada is no longer with the team. Garrett Crochet's been traded. I used to have Gavin Sheets even on there, who was DFA'd, or not non-tendered, basically, not offered a contract. You're down to some very limited options with what I would call the core of the remaining team. We'll start with Andrew Vaughn, and my three asterisks, he's one of them, because basically there are a handful of players on this team where they're still here, they're still on the roster, but if they play well, if they improve and play well, they're going to be traded to another team. If their performance continues to be subpar, they're going to be let go in some fashion. They're going to be discarded, if you will. And Andrew Vaughn is probably first on the list. Now, Andrew Vaughn, to me, is on the last day of execution here. If the Ryan Fuller hitting program does not pull out the potential that we all saw in Andrew Vaughn a million years ago, and I was never high on Andrew Vaughn, but I wasn't expecting him to struggle this much. I just didn't think he would be a top-tier first baseman. He's been basically a replacement-level player for his entire career, and including last year, very brutal start first 2 months of the year. He did bounce back and hit decently well in the second half, but it was not enough to make up for it. So he's the first guy in the core that I've got in there that just sort of I have as an asterisk, Todd. He's a guy that I don't think he's here long term, even no matter what kind of happens in the first 3 quarters of the season.
Sorry to interrupt, but he shouldn't even be here. That should have been an easy non-tender. I mean, they're going to pay him $5 million. You could have gotten Josh Bell the same production for, what, 3?
Yep.
I mean, you could have gotten a lot. You just signed Dahlbeck for $1.2 million. I mean, I'd rather have him strike out, but at least he's going to be able to hit home runs. I mean, he shouldn't even be on the team. Sorry to interrupt, but
I agree. I was very much on the DFA Andrew Vaughn train. But another thing is too, you look at the down the path in the organization. There's no big hulking first baseman just waiting to take the spot. Tim Alco's there, but there's a lot of strikeouts. He's kind of an older prospect, whoever. And maybe you could have said, okay, get out of here and we'll gamble here. But like you mentioned, the free agent options were voluminous. You could have brought in kind of anybody. You could have spent a little bit more money and brought in someone like Carlos Santana. At least guarantee that there's a glove there at first base and to support some of these young infielders,
Yeah, you get a gold glove first baseman, too. I mean, that's why
Absolutely.
Why are you bringing this guy back? There's just not there. But I agree with the Fuller. And I promise I will not be tweeting you Andrew Vaughn All-Star this year. Okay? that was the hill that I was going to die on. And you know what? I died on that hill. He brought me to the other side. He is a replacement level player. That's where I'm going. All right, so Andrew Benintendi and Luis Robert Jr., those are your other asterisks, correct?
Correct. Yeah, they round out the rest of the position players that I would still consider part of the core, and they are asterisks as well because Luis Robert being the main one, if he plays well, I mean, the White Sox were trying to trade him this last offseason. If he plays well, I think by the trade deadline, he'll be moved and he'll be on to another team because his $18, $20 million options that are coming up in the next 2 seasons look appetizing if he's the 3 or 4 WAR player that you really think he is with the glove and the power and everything. And last year was a very down year for him. On the contrary, if he continues to struggle the way he has been, I don't think the White Sox will even end up trading him. I think they may end up just kind of like not picking up the option and letting him walk in free agency after the season. So you have this very asterisk situation with Luis Robert in which, he play well, great. We'll find you somewhere new. Play poorly, and we'll also find you somewhere new to play.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, him coming into this offseason, I would just say completely reset, Luis Robert here, because that was definitely a guy that, obviously, I think the injury hampered him. You were obviously there pretty much at the ballpark all the time, but you could just tell, too, when he was playing, he just did not want to be there. So I think the thing is let's get him to focus on just play good baseball. We'll get you the heck up out of here. Although, do you feel the front office wants to trade Luis Robert Jr. before spring training because of what you're saying? They could pay $2 million to have him just go away, and they lose him for nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think they would like to. I think that they didn't see the pricing that they were hoping to get in trading him in the offseason. I think they would have been willing to just fresh start and not take the risk of him coming to this season and really struggle. Last year was interesting about him. He had the injury, and there was some issues there. When he first came back from the injury, he did it for some power quite a bit. But there was something that was very noticeable with Luis, and it was kind of like two-sided here. On defense and running the bases, a ton of effort. He stole like 20 bases after he came back from the injury. So it's like there was effort there to like create havoc on the base paths, and the defense was still there, although it wasn't as good as it had been. I think it's probably injury related. But the offense is where he really struggled. And one thing that I noticed about his approach was he was trying to lay off that slider more, and he was kind of becoming more passive at the plate. But what happened was he stopped hitting the cookies for home runs. And so that really shrunk his production way down. He didn't hit the pitches that were middle that he's supposed to smash and create all of his offensive value. And I think there's some issue with him trying to become more the hitter that they wanted him to become, instead of just being a grip it and rip it guy where he can actually have some plate discipline, because he did walk quite a bit more for a stretch there. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough spot. I think the front office would have loved to get out of Luis Robert before the season starts, and maybe they still will, but I kind of doubt it. I think he'll be here this summer, and you're kind of hoping that he plays much better.
Oh, yeah, I'm willing to gamble, and I say, roll the dice, because you trade him then for more at the trade deadline, and especially now he's going to be in the Garrett Crochet situation, just ships passing in the night, as Ryan McGuffey says, because his contract after 2-year options are up, he's not re-signing. He's not going to have an extension through the end of the year or through the end of the decade, because he's represented by Scott Boras. He's going to free agency.
Yes.
Like he does in 2023, he's going to free agency, so you just enjoy the 2 years of cheapness. So that's why I think they're going to trade him, unless the Cincinnati Reds, knock on wood, I'm hoping, call and say, listen, we'll give you one of our 3 guys that are at single A or in the top 100. Then I would be like, fine, because they're high-end, high-ceiling, something significant type guys. So you also have Jonathan Cannon, Davis Martin in your core. Makes sense to me. Did Drew Thorpe at any point get any consideration, just because he did have 7 solid starts before the 2 injury potential starts? And he also has at least that floor if he could be a good bullpen arm with that devastating changeup, or he could be an ace like Aaron Nolan. Yeah,
no, I had Drew Thorpe in there then to last year. Then the injury happened, and then in this offseason, I just sort of decided, look, the entire rotation feels like it's in flux. The guy has minor league options, and I don't know. The White Sox are putting a good face on it, saying he's fine, he's going to be ready for spring training, there's no issues whatsoever. But until we all see it, until we all see the effectiveness come back, because we saw when he had those good starts, but then when he got hurt, he pitched a few more starts and he got absolutely destroyed. So there's a fine line with these guys that don't have those big fastballs, that are dependent on the soft stuff like a changeup like that. They really got to be precise. They really got to have the command down. And so if there's any little hindrance there with the injury, that's a problem. So I moved him off for now. When he comes back and shows that he's healthy, he is a guy that would kind of slide back into the group there. But I couldn't even find you a bullpen guy, Todd, that I would consider long-term. Now, I like Prelander Baroa down the stretch, but the volatility of him so far in his major league career, I don't know if I trust him to throw strikes when come April here. So there's a lot of question marks. And the White Sox do got good high-end prospects that are on the doorstep. But until they come up here, until they show, we can't let them fool us again. They got to show it in the majors, and then we can move on.
So who else do you think can join this core during the season? Like when I have you back on, hopefully in July and August, or actually hopefully I'll have you on a few more times because I love talking baseball with you. But when we talk about this again, hopefully by the trade deadline, who's gonna do you see anybody being on the core?
I mean, fingers crossed, someone like Miguel Vargas or Brian Ramos takes a step and ends up being a regular and on this core. Kyle Teel makes it to the majors, and he's everything everyone said he was, and he's an everyday big league catcher, and he makes it onto this core. You have Colson Montgomery sitting back there as well. You got Edgar Carroll. There's other guys who could really become part of the core out of that group. On the pitching side, really, to me, it's a bunch of guys, and then it's Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith. And I don't know how quickly they're going to push either one of them, but if Noah Schultz goes to AAA and dominates like he dominated at AA, I mean, what else are you going to do with the guy? Like, how can you keep him in the minors any longer? No one hits him. And if he gets all the way up through the levels and people continue to not hit him, I don't see how he doesn't end up in Chicago, and then he ends up basically the top of the line of that group. I mean, like, there's a possibility that Noah Schultz thing could look like the Paul Skeens thing just looked like. Where he's dominating, and it's just like, well, you can't, we got to just keep moving him because he's just that good. Fingers crossed that's how it ends up working out. The White Sox so far, to me, have looked like under the Chris Getz era is that they're willing to give guys a shot. They let Brooks Baldwin shoot his way straight up to the majors, but they're not just going to give it to guys. Like, they didn't just hand it to Colson Montgomery last year. You didn't prove it by playing well enough, you're not coming up. And so I kind of like that philosophy. Well, we'll see. We'll see who lights up the scoreboard in Charlotte and ends up belonging here. But I think there's a handful of guys that could, edge their way in there, and guys that are going to start in Chicago as well.
So Noah Schultz, I keep going back and forth thinking, is he going to be up next year or is he going to be in 2026? The only reason why I might see him staying in the minors is you just do the Garrett Crochet plan with him. You just do it at AA. I think he would do fine at Charlotte. It's just that stadium is such a bandbox that even the few times that these guys do touch him, because they're not touching them at AA, but sometimes they do touch them, it could go from normally in Birmingham where it would be a flyout, or even at Wright Field it's a flyout. At Charlotte, it's somewhere at Truist, a building, a Truist Bank or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's an office building, office window. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it seems like that. So I could see them. That's the only reason why I could see them having Schultz there. I could see Smith though for sure, and obviously I could see both because Jerry loves calling up prospects to sell tickets. I remember Michael Kopech Day in 2017 or 2018. Yeah, you probably were at that game. Like I remember.
I was.
Please be good. Please be good. Obviously, it's not, but you remember those like when Jerry loves him some. Hey, here comes the future. That type of stuff. So I agree with you on that. Although I do have one critique. Why is Corey Lee not on there? Before we go to break, I mean, come on, that's our decade.
Corey Lee. I mean, I'm interested to. I'm interested to see what happens with Corey Lee because you brought in the catcher whisperer, Walker McKinven. And I don't know if he's going to if they're going to like bless Corey Lee with more of a pronounced role, or if it's going to be like very quickly Corey Lee sees himself out of the rotation here because you have two young catchers on the doorstep. You went out and signed a catcher, just to kind of hold these guys off. But I'm interested to see what happens here because I think a lot of the Corey Lee, like the first month, 6 weeks where we were excited about him, all that stuff faded because the only thing that remained was he does have a huge arm, but he showed a lot of warts when he had to play a lot. So I'm interested to see what comes of him. I almost put him in there, but he's like quasi backup catcher. He needs to show me a little more.
Cheap backup catcher for the rest of the decade. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the second coming of Rock Karkovice. I will not stand for this. I will not stand for this slant.
Love it.
All right, so Beefloaf, you're putting your money where your mouth is, and we're going to discuss this after the break. You're thinking the Sox will finish with more than 50 wins, so we'll discuss why. We'll discuss that after the break. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. I always keep telling you, the money lines, the over-unders, and the spreads, they're fun to play. But if you want to win big, FanDuel's parlays, props, and futures are the way to go. A popular parlay for Kansas City and Houston's playoff game this weekend, Nico Collins, Travis Kelce, Isaiah Pacheco, Joe Mixon, all scoring an anytime touchdown. It's at plus 4502 and $10 on that. And if it hits, $450.21 is won. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you're not done so. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. And I'm here with Beefloaf, Mr. Delicious from the 108. And obviously, I would highly suggest that you also subscribe to the From the 108 on the YouTube channel, correct? That's where you can get all the stuff.
That's correct. Yeah. Yep. On YouTube, or you can go to FromThe108.com. You can get our blogs, and you can click through there to get all the podcasts, our merch store, everything that you need from the108.com.
And you also got a special event coming up in 2 weeks, which we're going to talk about in the third segment of why sometimes just need to get together, folks, and have a good time, all that type of stuff. Because being a White Sox fan can be so depressing sometimes. Like, honestly, I don't want to rip on the audience. Like, my YouTube community page has been great on Locked On White Sox, but I also run the Southside Showdown page for Fansided, and that Facebook page, my gosh, there are some bitter, angry people where it's like the same thing over and over again. But we'll talk about that in the next segment. That's a tease there. So, Pete, you put a wager down on the White Sox win total. Why do you think the Sox will finish with over 50 wins, as some books has it saying? I think I saw one book having it as low as 49.5. Was that one of the early lines? Like, why are you seeing the Sox having more than 50 wins?
Well, I mean, there's a couple things going on here, Todd. So number one, I post a ticket out there. I bet $1,100 to win $1,000 on over 49.5. I bet it at Caesar Sportsbook, but you could have bet it at any sports book where it's legal and wherever you're betting on stuff. And the reason why I bet one is because I think a lot of times the we'll call it the business that we're in, content business, is partially about explaining things to the listener, but then it's also part prognostication. And I think a lot of people tend to just tell you their winners, and they forget about their losers. They forget about their bad takes. And I'm not naming any names out there in the White Sox content sphere, but it happens across all content. And so for me, kind of ethically, if I'm going to take a good position on something, I'm going to let everyone know. I'm going to show the ticket. I don't know if you've ever heard of, do you know who Nassim Taleb is?
I don't believe so.
Okay. He's an author, philosopher, trader. Anyway, he's got a character in his books. And the first book that I'd read by him is Fooled by Randomness. It's called Fat Tony. Fat Tony believes that you have to have a position on something to truly have an opinion. Otherwise, you don't actually have an opinion. And so this is kind of the ethos that I'm taking here by placing an amount that would hurt me if I lose. Like, enough where it's ha-ha, Beefloaf if I lose, because I put it out in the marketplace and everyone's like, oh, Beefloaf, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about with this team. And so there's the level of, I want my money where my mouth is. I want everyone to see it. And everyone dunk on me, feel free if it loses. And then, obviously, if it wins, great. Then I get my $1,000. But related to the White Sox specifically, why I think this was a no-brainer bet for me. One, you don't see betting lines that low for regular season in baseball. And despite the fact the team just had the most losses in modern history, as far as all the, I go into Clay Davenport's site where he kind of calculates some of these advanced metrics for what the record really should be, kind of third-order records. And not just Pythagorean, which is one way to do it, but he had the White Sox as a 48-50 win team. So as terrible as they looked last year, they were basically as good as this betting line. Now, that's with how they actually played. So an offense that had one above league average hitter, which was Tommy Pham, a pitching staff that was, save for Garrett Crochet and then a couple months of Eric Fetty, was pretty much horrible. A terrible bullpen, with the exception of the last month of the season when they had got rid of all the free agents and they brought in some of the journeymen and were able to kind of push through it. So I just think, in general, there's dead cat bounce here, but there's also, you can't possibly get as unlucky as that team got. And I know people are going to say, oh, unlucky Beef, they're terrible. I know they're terrible, but then they also got unlucky, and that's how they ended up being the worst or the most losses in modern history. And so it's a combination of, I think that number was flawed. The White Sox will bounce back a little bit, still, despite not being a very good team. and integrity for myself. I want it out there. Right? And if I make a dumb prognostication, I want it out there so people can, there's the record. He was an idiot. He screwed that up, because I got to show what I'm really doing, not just float the winners out there and hide all my losing thought processes. Because I mean, I went on the Mid Show, which is Barstool's Chicago show. It was called the Mid Show back then. And Treasy and I both said the White Sox would win 70 games last year. We should get slaughtered for that, right? So I mean, I want it out there. I want it marked in the sand, Todd.
You were not the only one, though, to say the Sox might win 70 games. The Zips projection in 2024, how that just came out.
Yeah,
he had 65. I think Dan Zambrowski. I'm not always butcher his name. I'm terrible with names. Zamborski. He had them at 65 to 70 wins, with the caveat that if Dylan Cease gets traded, then the computer doesn't like it. So you weren't totally off. I mean, they did think there was projections, and you're right. Like the White Sox, yes, they were terrible, and their bullpen contributed to a lot of that historic losing, because you blow 37 saves. I mean, you only blow, say, 27. You're obviously nowhere near that record.
Right.
Exactly. The run differential, too. Mine was 505 runs. I mean, I looked at it, too, was the Oakland A's. I think I did it a couple episodes ago. Like, the Oakland A's, when they won 50 games, at least scored 585 runs, and I believe it was like a minus 250 run differential. So you just bring those down, and it looks like, too, this roster has at least been in control to lead it to factory resettings. I mean, it sounds like they've bought. Now, obviously, the Zips projections doesn't look very good for the bullpen, but because he's going off of all these terrible guys' past performance, when really, when you're talking about this, like I was so conditioned when I covered the Brewers. Doug Melvin used to always say, relievers are like volatile stocks. You want to buy low, you got to go with the, hope they get high, and then you sell them off high, but you always want to buy low. And I remember he said that over Jorge Lugo, I think it was Jorge Lugo or whatever, on his second go around when they were trying to bring him back. Obviously, he did not come back to standards, but I agree with you on that. But what I found funny is when I was reading the Zips projection about that, why does he think they're going to win more games, 60 games this year? Happenstance, like how you said.
Because real life happens, and you should win at least 60 games without everything going wrong. Like that, right? That's kind of his approach there. It's like, well, usually teams win at least that much, so they'll probably win that much.
You and I watched a lot of White Sox baseball. I know I watched on TV. You were obviously at the park, but think about how they did lose some games. They lost the game on one of the best walk-off saving grabs I have ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
And then I forget the guy.
Travis Jankowski.
Yeah, Travis Jankowski. His arm was in like the first row of left field. I mean, How did that happen? Or how many seeing eye singles just dropped, and you're like, that's how they blew the save? Like these hits that didn't have. So you're right. But you're a numbers guy too. Do you like that the team is sort of going back to Moneyball basics by just signing guys who can at least do this thing called it's on base?
Todd, I do as a general baseline. One of the things that concerns me, and it concerns me more long term with the White Sox and even the prospects that are coming through, is the only one to me that looks like they have true power, like above average power potential out of the ones that look like they're the more blue chip prospects, is Braden Montgomery, and he hasn't played a minor league game yet. A lot of my problem is, you can grab a lot of these on base guys, but there is a level of I'm worried about it a little bit with Chase Mydroff, is that sometimes these guys that run these high on bases in the minors, the major league pitchers just knock the bat out of their hands because they're not afraid of them taking them deep. And so then that all changes. Then the 15% walk rate becomes 7% or 6%, and the guy just doesn't hit enough to overcome it. And I think it's a fine approach to add the Mike Tauchmans. And actually, I think it's always a fine approach to add a Mike Tauchman type who's just a solid kind of quasi-regular bench player to put on a team. But the problem there is sometimes you end up with a team that doesn't have enough power, and they won't get on base as much as they should get on base because of that lack of power. And so I like it as like a first line of like, let's put this lettuce down, but the rest of the salad needs to come in, and it's going to have some pop. It needs it.
Yeah, and I think that's my biggest concern is where's the instant offense coming from, especially if they do trade Luis Robert Jr. before opening day, which I still think could be a real possibility, is where's the instant offense coming from? Although Chase Mydroth, I never thought about that. Now you just ruined my modern day walk. You're right. They'll just throw him strikes, and he'll gotta swing the bat.
I mean, maybe he'll be like Tommy Hers or one of the mid '80s Cardinals, where he'll just single and W to death and actually be valuable as a guy who doesn't hit for a lot of power. But I'm just curious to see it. Like it look, the profile's interesting in the minors, and I'm 100% sure, unless he gets hurt, dude's going to be here on 35th Street playing at some point during the year, and so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And those guys are fine to put in and around the roster, but I agree with you, Todd. You need that instant offense, man. Everyone who wins hits home runs. Ball go far, team go far type ethos, and the White Sox don't have that totally built into this yet.
Although bat-to-ball skills, they need at least 3 guys in the roster construction. I think that has been totally missed during the Rick Hahn era. It was too much power, and then you got Tony saying hit the ball on the ground with a bunch of power guys. So you're right. If Chase Meidroth hits singles and doubles, that's great. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, though, the scouting report on him, I think I had on the show a couple weeks ago, I was saying, like, he just won't lift the ball off the bat. And they, like, granted, it was AA guys and AAA guys still. They tried to get him to swing, and he was like, no, I'm not swinging unless I see my pitch. So maybe he's Scott Hatteberg, okay?
Hopefully. Let's go.
Don't freak out of blocks, please. All right, so From the 108 has a fun event coming up that I wanted to discuss with Beefloaf after the break. I think it's important, too, that we talk about it because us Sox fans need to band together. We'll discuss that next on Locked On White Sox. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts. This show is available on all major podcast platforms. And again, Mr. Delicious, where can we always find your great content?
You can find us at FromThe108.com. You can find us on Twitter at FromThe108. You can find me at Mr. Delicious13 on Twitter. But yeah, you can find us on YouTube from the 108 or YouTube / from the 108. But FromThe108.com is the place where you can find absolutely everything: blogs, our merch store, links to the podcast, and YouTube streams, everything. So there you go, Todd. Thank you. Bless you for having the shirt there. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I gotta get you guys a lockdown shirt. Like, I got a couple of them.
I would love it. I'm down, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, I'll try. My goal is to get to a White Sox game. I'm going to sit in the 108 with you guys. That is one of my goals. Honestly, like, in terms of being able to get to a White Sox game, I watch them all the time on the MLB.TV package, all that stuff. But it's been, I'm trying to think. I think the last time I was at a Sox game was 2015 for the 10-year anniversary. So I got to get through.
Shoot.
The 20-year anniversary. And I got to do a better job now that I'm obviously hosting a show and writing about it all the time.
When you're coming through, reach out. Well, we always got extra tickets, so don't pay for a ticket. Come sit in the 108. Someone will have an extra. Come sit with us.
Yeah, and I wanted to get to the Milwaukee event that you guys had, but I had a bunch of family stuff to do. So the next time they come up to Milwaukee next season, you guys definitely hopefully come by. I'll cook out for you guys and that type of stuff.
Sounds awesome.
Brats there.
I love it.
So, Beefloaf, you and Chorizy and My Sox Summer have an awesome event planned in 2 weeks. What is it?
So we call it 108 Day Live, and it's at Reggie's Rock Club, 2105 South State Street. That's in the South Loop, so that's in the city. And it's Saturday, January 25th at 8 p.m. And so we're selling tickets for it. We're going to have, it's $20 a ticket. You can buy the tickets at 108.ing/live. So that's 108.ing/live. We're going to have Scott Merkin on the panel with us. We're going to have Herbie Lawrence come up on the panel with us. And we're going to have Dave Williams from Barstool up on the panel with us. There'll be other people in attendance, surprises as well we're not going to mention. But this is an annual event. We've been doing this since, I believe, 2018. We've been having get-togethers kind of in and around the time of Sox Fest. Even when they stopped having Sox Fest, we would have this get-together and have people come and commiserate. And like you mentioned, Todd, it's just important for Sox fans to get together in the off-season, have a beer or two, see all the people that you haven't seen at the ballpark or whatever in a long time, or people that you interact with on the internet, social media, get together, talk about the team, talk about other stuff. Some of it is, the 108 stuff, some of it's comedy, some of it's White Sox. And so it should be a really fun time. Tickets are $20, it'll be $25 at the door. So if you show up on Saturday, January 25th, and you don't have a ticket, you can still buy a ticket at the door, but it's better to buy it online because you can get it cheaper. It's only $20 right now.
So the reason why I wanted to also discuss this is, you're right. I think it's important for Sox fans to still get together, to commiserate, to kind of vent and all that, because it's going to be a rough 2025 season. It's going to have to endure 300 losses Well, what do you say to the people that still, I just want to say, I've come to believe them as the no context fans, meaning they just believe, Jerry doesn't spend and blah, blah, blah. Look, the team had to cut payroll because you got to give some of these guys a shot to make it in the big leagues. And what would all this signing do if they sign? Yes, I would have loved for them to sign Willie Adames and Anthony Santander, but the team is still going to suck.
Right. Right. And good luck convincing them to come here when this team's so bad, too.
That's the other thing. So when Chris Getz says that, and the thing I want to scream at some of these fans is at the end of the day, it's just about spending the money wisely. And I think that's why we need to preach to these people that there's some context, and it's okay that these things are happening. It doesn't mean you have to like it. Just get the context before you grumble.
I agree 100%, Todd. And I feel the same way you feel. Like, I'm watching it closely, and I like all the minutia of all this stuff. I like when they bring in a random NRI, or like they sign Josh Rojas. And then I like digging in on all that stuff. But not all fans do. And I have a side podcast called The Au Jus, and I did a solo show right before the end of the year with my resolutions. My resolution for White Sox fans was to enjoy the team on your terms. If you like digging into all that stuff, dig into all that stuff. If you like MFing management and just having a beer with friends and cursing about the things you hate about the team, do that. But continue to enjoy the team and continue to get in on there. Because I'm with you. It's tough to fight the fight of, hang on a second, they're building something, because everyone's heard it already, right? So like you're telling these people, and it's like they don't want to hear it. What they want to see is some results. And so those results are a little bit off. But in the meantime, just enjoy this thing how you want to enjoy it. And I'm enjoying it the way you are, Todd. I see this little transaction here, or this guy in the minors is starting to make a move. This is cool. Like maybe they really are building something, or they signed Ryan Fuller. What's this hitting program going to look like? And so I just want fans to just enjoy the team on their own terms.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to rip on anybody. I mean, there's plenty of people that come here to vent on my show and on your show. I'm not trying to do that. What I'm trying to say is it's the habitual constant of just grumble, I'm clutching my pearls, and just be like, look at the context and enjoy it in this way. Because, I want to ask you this, because you do go to all the games. You have a season ticket, and you got a discounted season ticket package, I hope, because remember they had that. That's where I've seen that. But what I get tired of is these people that want these protests to be, well, just don't go to the ballpark and steal CHSN through an authorized streaming. And I want to be like, all you're going to do is reinforce the owner's behavior that way. I'm sorry, but we might actually have to schedule go to the ballpark days, like how the because all it's going to do is, if you say don't go to the ballpark, he's going to just continually not spend. He's going to continually to blame until he gets his new stadium and claim poverty. Am I missing something here?
No, no, I'm in full agreement. Yeah, the complaints are warranted. I don't want to be that guy either. Any White Sox complaint is warranted. However, don't you want to try to find a little joy in it? If you can, like that would be what I would say to people.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I try to say. Like, you can't all be just doom and gloom. You got to find some joy. And I've been accused of, my ratings have said, he's so negative. Well, that's because the team's bad. What's good to talk about? And that's why it's good to get together, get that context. I hope everybody can go. I can't make it. I have a family event. I think I'm going to have to donate a ticket, though.
Would love it.
Yeah, but it's just one of those things where, and I'm not trying to say that everything is warranted. All the skepticism is warranted. Where I just want to say to a lot of people is just, hey, take a break. They've got, you guys have these great events where people can get together in the off season. You can go to Sox Fest. I'm sure Jerry will not speak at Sox Fest. You can go and reach into this. And as I said, if you can't find joy, just go watch some Rico Nishida highlights.
Yes, watch him tear up the minors. Exactly.
That guy has the Ichiro swing. I'm not saying he's going to be the next Ichiro, but I have a feeling that's my next guy. That's the guy I'm going to be advocating for. I'm done with the Andrew Vaughn application. It's Rico Nishida. He's my guy. He
did nothing but hit.
Yeah.
Like, if he just came up and was like Juan Pierre Light, that would be a lot of fun. Like, even if he's not that good of a player and he just came up and singled you to death and was like okay defender, like, it'd be great. I would love that.
Every time I turned on a Winston-Salem Dash game, that guy was on base. Well, anyway, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'll be back tomorrow. I think I'm going to have MLB.com's White Sox beat reporter Scott Merkin on. We're trying to nail down If it does not work out, I'm going to discuss the Zips projections for the 2025 season. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion with Beefloaf from the 108. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJW or at Locked On Sox. You can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. And Mr. Delicious, again, where can we find all the greatest stuff that you guys put out?
From the108.com. You can find everything there. You can find our YouTube at From the 108, Twitter at From the 108, and myself on Twitter at Mr. Delicious 13. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.